Well, hello. My name is Pastor Charlene, and today I am going to read you The Velveteen Rabbit. It's The Velveteen Rabbit by Margery Williams. There was once a Velveteen Rabbit. Well, I don't want to do that. We'll start again. Hello, my name is Pastor Charlene. I'm going to be reading to you today The Velveteen Rabbit. The story is a little bit long, and so I'm going to break it up into two parts. So you'll have the first part to be able to read, and then if you want to be able to play the second part next or for tomorrow night, you can. So this is Velveteen Rabbit by Margery Williams. There was once a Velveteen Rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy, and as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white, and he had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged in the top of the boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was charming. There were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges and a toy engine and chocolate almonds and a clockwork mouse, but the rabbit was quite the best of all. For at least 2 hours the boy loved him, and then aunts and uncles came to dinner, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper and unwrapping of parcels, and in the excitement of looking at all the new presents, the Velveteen Rabbit was forgotten. You see the picture there? Christmas morning. For a long time he lived in the toy cupboard board or on the nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, and being only made of velveteen, some of the more expensive toys quite snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior, and they looked down upon everyone else, and they were full of modern ideas, and pretended that they were real. The model boat, who had lived through 2 seasons and lost most of his paint, caught the tone from them and never missed an opportunity of referring to his rigging in technical terms. The rabbit could not claim to be a model of anything, for he didn't know that real rabbits existed. He thought they were all stuffed with sawdust like himself, and he understood that sawdust was quite out of date and should never be mentioned in modern circles. So even Timothy, the jointed wooden lion, who was made by the disabled soldiers, and should have had a broader view, put on airs and pretended that he was connected with the government. Well, between them all, the poor little rabbit was made to feel himself very insignificant and commonplace, and the only person who was kind to him at all was the skin horse. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of his hairs on his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger, and by break their mainsprings and pass away. And he knew that there were only toys, and that would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the skin horse, understand all about it. So what is real? Asked the rabbit one day, when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender, before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside of you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you. Then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, says the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. you become. And it takes a long time. And that's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit, and then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the Skin Horse might be sensitive. But the Skin Horse only smiled. You can see the picture there. So the Skin Horse tells his story. The boy's uncle made me real, he said. That was a great many years ago. But once you're real, you cannot become unreal again, and it lasts for always. And the rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real would happen to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and his whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without these uncomfortable things happening to him. There was a person named Nana who ruled the nursery. Sometimes she took no notice of the playthings lying about, and sometimes, for no reason whatsoever, she went swooping about like a great wind and hustled them away into cupboards. She called this tidying up, and the playthings all hated it, especially the tin ones. The rabbit didn't mind so much, for wherever he was thrown, he came down soft. Now one evening when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china dog that always slept with him. And Nana was in a hurry, and it was too much trouble to hunt for the china dogs at bedtime. So she simply looked about her, and seeing that the toy cupboard stood open, she made a swoop. Here, she said, take your old bunny. He'll do to sleep with you. And she dragged the rabbit out by one ear and put him into the boy's arms. And that night, and for many nights after, the Velveteen Rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him very tight, and sometimes he rolled over on him, and sometimes he pushed him so far under the pillow that the rabbit could scarcely breathe. And he missed, too, those long moonlit hours in the nursery, when all the house was silent, and his talks with the Skin Horse. But very soon he grew to like it, for the boy used to talk to him and made nice tunnels for him under the bedclothes that he said were like the burrows the real rabbits lived in. And they had splendid games together in the whispers, when Nana had gone away to her supper and left the nightlight burning on the mantelpiece. And when the boy dropped off to sleep, the rabbit would snuggle down close under his warm chin and dream, and with the boy's hand clasped close around him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy. So happy that he never noticed how his beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier, and his tail became unsewn, and all the pink rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. Spring came, and they had long days in the garden, for wherever the boy went, the rabbit too. He had rides in the wheelbarrow and picnics on the grass, and lovely fairy huts built for him under the raspberry canes behind the flower border. And once, when the boy was called away suddenly to go out to tea, the rabbit was left out on the lawn until long after dusk. And Nana had to come and look for him with a candle, because the boy couldn't go to sleep unless he was there. He was wet through with the dew and quite earthly from diving into the burrows the boy had made for him in the flower bed, and Nana grumbled as she rubbed him off with a corner of her apron. There's the bunny being outside. It's springtime. You must have your old bunny, she said. Fancy all that fuss for a toy. And the boy sat up in bed and stretched out his hands. She says, "Give me my bunny," he said. "You mustn't say that. He isn't a toy. He's real." And when the little rabbit heard that, he was happy, for he knew that what the skin horse had said was true at last. The nursery magic had happened to him, and he was a toy no longer. He was real. And the boy himself had said it. That night he was almost too happy to sleep, and so much love stirred in his little sawdust heart that it almost burst. And into his boot-button eyes that had long ago lost their polish, there came a look of wisdom and beauty, so that even Nana noticed the next morning when she picked him up and said, "I declare if that old bunny hasn't got a quite a knowing expression." That was a wonderful summer. Near the house where they lived there was a wood, and in the long June evenings the boy liked to go there after tea and play. He took the Velveteen Rabbit with him, and before he wandered to the pink flowers or to play brigades among the trees, he always made the rabbit a little nest somewhere among the bracken where he would be quite cozy. For he was a kind-hearted little boy, and he liked Bunny to be comfortable. One evening, while the rabbit was laying there alone, watching the ants that had ran to and fro between his velvet paws in the grass, he saw two strange beings creep out of the tall bracken near him. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They must have been very well made, for their seams didn't show at all, and they changed shape in a queer way when they moved. One minute they were long and thin, and the next minute they were fat and bunchy. And instead of always staying the same like he did, their feet padded softly on the ground, and they crept quite close to him, twitching their noses while the rabbit stared hard to see which side of the clockwork stuck out. For he knew that people who jump generally have something to wind themselves up. But he couldn't see it, and there was evidently a new kind of rabbit altogether. And you can see the picture of the rabbit, of the Velveteen Rabbit, and the two rabbits coming out of the forest. Well, this ends the first part of our reading, and please move on to the second.